Today, we talk about, what do you call it? To be manifested. You know, for you to be seeing this right now, a lot of things have to happen. It's not just this recording that I'm doing right now. This one step is like one of a billion steps that I have to like plan for either before and or after to arrive at your computer in your home, you know? And in the process of all that, I knew if I just bogged down with like doing the podcast quote right, I'd be sitting with a thumb up my ass forever, and it may not have ever happened. So, you know, I'm tired of that happening. Is it perfect? No. Is it the best podcast out? No. Do I want it to be? Of course. Why else would I start it? But you know, more importantly, it's just like I've become so appreciative that you guys value me for me and not for the extras and the accoutrements that maybe you know, kind of help elsewhere. Now my brain's getting extracted with a bunch of other things, and I haven't even started like a base topic yet. But you know, this is a work in progress. This is kind of like what this is about. So again, going back to the original intent of the start of this was to like, you know, kind of put out there my ideas and ambitions for what this could be. This kind of extends into I guess what I'm trying to get at, which is, you know, I want you to see the process from the beginning. Like, this is me literally just sitting down to do this. I just busted out the computer. I put a mic here. I was going to bust out my Yeti Pro or whatever, and then I was just, that's just going to take an extra step. And then in the editing place, I've got to like move things around. And how much better is the audio really going to be? Are you guys even really going to care? And it's just like, no, just let's do this. And like I was saying, you know, things do get lonely, especially up here. And as beautiful as this view is, and as much as I'm appreciative that it hasn't gotten tiring yet, it does get lonely. And you know, with me spending a lot of time here, and then going to Iowa, where I also spend a lot of lonely time, / get just super worked, and in some cases overworked, not by anyone's fault other than my own. You know, just kind of leaves very little time for self-reflection. And this podcast, to me, one of the major goals is just to help myself. You know, this is selfishly a lot for myself, you know, just to talk. I think there's a lot of power in, you know, talking and being interactive with people, but, you know, I'm not going to force myself to have conversations with people. I'm not going to force people to come over here when they don't want to be here. You know, I want to use this as an outlet to just exist and attract energy from others that I'm putting out there for y'all. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the goal of this. One of the goals of this. Another goal, I guess I would say, is you know, I'd like to. You know, I feel like I know a lot of things, or at least I've either experienced or processed and analyzed a lot of things, either more so or in just a different light than others have, in whatever the topic could be, / I may offer a perspective that you or someone else may have never thought about in a particular topic, realm, whatever. So it'd be nice to at least contribute that to the human existence. And then another goal would be, you know, simply to grow and have an audience. And, you know, when I listen to other podcasts and I listen or see other entertainers or influencers or pop figures in this realm kind of grow in this way, you know, just the connectivity that you have with not only the world yourself, but your ability to connect the world together is such a powerful thing. You know, I was listening to the Brilliant Idiots podcast today. I think it was a Flagrant 2 episode, I believe. It doesn't matter. It all kind of blends in together after a while. But it's kind of cool what they're doing with their whole Patreon and kind of the examples they're giving of like this ecosystem they're building where people of like-mindedness to them now have this kind of like nesting ground to like grow and develop like their own little fraternity, essentially. And that'd be cool to like kind of foster such an environment for people like me. And what I mean by that is, you know, misfits, people who, quote, don't belong here, people who people are scared of, you know, people who, you know, are afraid of me or don't understand me or are weirded out by me or think I'm awkward or think I'm too cringy, let alone super cringy, let alone just cringy enough to not want to you know, fucking deal with, or, you know, whatever the misunderstood one, the underestimated one, you know, those, I want this to be like a beacon for those kinds of people. And it may sound cocky to some of you, but I now am okay with that cockiness coming across because so many kids have reached out to me over the past several months, especially in the past 6 months or so, just all these DM slides about how much I inspire them, or whatever way, whether it's to pursue medicine or whether it's to just be themselves, or the encouragement to just be wacky and goofy themselves because they saw someone else doing it and not being afraid to do it. And I've always kind of had that mentality, but only in specific settings. And that's another reason for this, is like I'm in this secluded, very high-rise penthouse in the middle of Manhattan. Not a ton of noise up here, just a nice ambience of the city, and I can just be myself up here. And I've gotten over that initial fear with the whole camera and social media and hate comments and this and that. And there's a lot I want to focus on there. It's just like, this is another reason this is episode 0. It's just like I already can tell this is very unorganized, and I'm hoping I'll kind of learn it as I go, and maybe just kind of fine tune it as I go. This is how I did it from the beginning, and that's why I always. This is starting to kind of bug me, actually, because my thoughts are not flowing linearly. They're flowing very tree branchy, very much in parallel and not in series. It's like one of the goals I had with this whole thing was like to have this maybe 2-3 hour long ish, and then I could cut it up at least into pieces that were about specific topics, so that they could be more digestible, because some people just can't sit through a 3-hour podcast. I know for certain podcasts, like I love the people on the podcast, like Joe Rogan podcast, for example, right? I love that podcast, but I can't sit through 3 hours of that shit. Like, I like the highlights, give me the clips, and the interesting ones I'll get enough out of. And I do that for a few podcasts, but yeah, I was hoping to do it that way. It's just like I'm already thinking ahead. In my head, I'm playing director, producer, writer, executive producer, adjunct producer, co-producer, data, whatever, editor, publisher, blah, blah, blah. So I'm already thinking about like 8 different steps in my head of like, as I'm saying things, how it's going to translate to not only the screen, but also to the footage later, how it's going to be edited. So like I'm trying to like process, and it's really starting to like piss me off even more right now, just how unorganized my thoughts are. But at the same time, I don't want to have to change the way I'm thinking, because that was, again, the whole purpose of this was just for me to just be there and just let it be there, because at the end of the day, no one loses anything. If it's interesting, you're still here. If it's not interesting, you clicked out and you moved on to something else. And I didn't get punched in the face. I didn't lose my job. You didn't lose hairs on your head or get measles, or hopefully not. And we all kind of move on. So I'm trying to approach it with that creative lack of blockage, but at the same time, I'm very well aware that the only way creative work, so to speak, is if you find that perfect balance of creative plus execution from a non-creative side. I'm sure that didn't confuse / bore a lot of you. Let's see, shall we jump into topics? I feel like there's a lot of things I didn't address, but again, this was part of this whole thing. It's just like, sometimes you just can't tell you how many times I sat in front of this fucking lens and just couldn't turn it on. Like, I just was like, I knew I was going to do something like this where I was just like blabble, 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 and I don't feel like I'm being productive with it, and yet because of that I just freeze, and then I end up not doing anything for the night. So I'm just happy at the very least this will be just like a ridding of cobwebs. Yeah, I feel like this battery's going to die too. Maybe I should just account for that. Give us a second, folks. We'll be right back. This would be where the sponsors would come in. Am I right? Psych! That's the wrong number. Okay. All right. Speaking of how raw this is going to be, I also had the bright idea of having this be the second angle. The wide lens being the beautiful angle, so that you guys can at least see something pretty while I blabber. And the other thing was, and then I'd have my main phone, which would function kind of like if I wanted to not screenshot, but like show you what I'm seeing on my screen. Because again, that whole processing of like understanding how much extra effort goes into editing something in, or excuse me, it's just like, and as a one-man team, it just bogs you down so much, you really don't want to deal with it. So